After missing 9 straight games with an ankle injury that we thought was only going to hold him out for around a week, Zach LaVine makes his return for the Sacramento Kings just in time to take on the one team that he's connected to in trade rumors in the Milwaukee Bucks. Coincidence? Or was tonight an audition? Let's talk about it right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, back here inside the Golden One Center, where the Sacramento Kings will be playing a lot of games at home throughout the month of January. They lose to the Milwaukee Bucks tonight, 115-98, and just a very weird game, right? A game where the Bucks were dominating, and then Sacramento all of a sudden explodes on this massive run, and then you blink, and suddenly it's over, and all 15,000 of us here in the Golden One Center are rubbing our eyes going, did we just imagine that run? Did it actually happen? Like, what do we make of that epic comeback attempt that the Sacramento Kings made over a very short period of time? We'll talk about this all coming up later on in the podcast. We're going to start this show, though, talking about Zach LaVine, right? A few weeks ago, Zach injures his ankle, misses 9 straight games with the ankle injury. However, over the last handful of games, we've started seeing Zach out there during his normal pregame warm-up time, getting his individual work in, getting shots up, looking good. Common procedure for players working their way back from injury. Maybe they're not quite cleared and ready to go yet, but they can still get their shots up, get back into game shape or NBA shape as much as possible, and get closer and closer to that return. So as we saw Zach out there putting in the work, and we heard rumblings that his return is coming, all of our eyes went to this Sunday and the Kings versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Why? Because the Bucks have been connected and linked to Zach LaVine in potential trade rumors and trade talks. Now, maybe that's all they are. Maybe they're just rumors. Maybe it's just talk. A lot of the narrative seems to be the Bucks are looking at Zach LaVine as someone that they could potentially bring in that can't just help them figure some things out this season, because they've been very disappointing to start this season, add a scoring punch that team needs. But also maybe Zach could be someone that could come in there and help the Bucks make a last-ditch effort to convince Giannis Antetokounmpo to not ask out, to stick around so they don't have to trade the Greek Freak and the biggest star in franchise history. So you have LaVine come back tonight, and I know it could be coincidence. You're going to hear from Zach LaVine. He was asked by Jake Gaden of CBS 13 tonight about if it was a coincidence or not. You'll hear his response to that in just a second. I know it could be coincidental, but some things seem a little too perfect that naturally makes you skeptical. Zach to be working and taking longer than we initially expected, because when he got hurt, we got the press release from the Sacramento Kings saying he would be reevaluated in a week. Now, that doesn't mean that he would be good to go in a week, but typically when we are given a timetable for the reevaluation, typically that reevaluation is around the time where that player is expected to return. Like, he's being reevaluated, okay, he's good to go, now he's going to be available in the next game. That wasn't the case with Zach at all. He was out for a pretty decent chunk of time with that ankle injury. Again, I'm not saying he's faking the injury, but I think it's very possible that the Sacramento Kings were in no rush to necessarily bring him back. But suddenly it makes a whole lot of sense for the Kings and for Zach, if he's interested in going to Milwaukee, to play in tonight's game and audition for the Milwaukee Bucks, who are, again, the only team that I've heard and read and seen that really has any sort of legitimate possible connection to a potential LaVine trade. Now, I'll be honest with you, regardless of what he did tonight, even if he scored 50 points, I have a hard time believing that Zach is going to get traded. I don't think it's going to happen. It's because his contract is that bad, and the money is so scared around the league right now. I don't think Zach is the right risk for the Bucks to take. I don't think Zach LaVine moves the needle enough for the Milwaukee Bucks in their desperate attempt to keep Giannis for them to trade what they'll need to trade to take on that money in order to bring him in. I just don't think it makes any sense for them, and I don't think the Sacramento Kings are going to find another team similar to themselves who are willing to take on Zach's contract. Just because the Kings were willing to do it for some odd reason doesn't mean any other team is going to be willing to do it. So I don't see a trade happening, even with tonight's 20 points, 6 of 12 from the field, 2 of 4 from three-point range, perfect 6 of 6 from the foul line, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. He was part of the group that went on that epic fourth quarter blitz comeback. And I actually thought that Zach had some really solid defensive moments in this game. Zach was part of like a 3-man full court press that the Kings were implementing when things were going right towards the end of that third quarter and early on in the fourth quarter. It was Zach, Neek, and Russell Westbrook picking up full court, and they forced a turnover, forced the Bucks to not be able to get into their offense until like 16, 15, 14 seconds left on the shot clock, just making things a little more difficult for a team. Zach in his first game back, regardless of if he waited to come back tonight or not, he played, 35 minutes? Off the bench in tonight's game. 35 and a half minutes. That's not easy for anyone to do after missing 9 NBA games. So I give Zach a lot of credit for the ways that he played. I just don't think it really moves the needle that much for Milwaukee. I don't think it really should move the needle that much for Milwaukee. And I just can't help but be skeptical that the Kings or Zach or both did not plan to have him return on this night. After the game, Jake Gayton asked Zach directly if this was the plan and if it was a coincidence or not. Here's what Zach LaVine had to say. But also, I included a third question in there where Zach was asked about coming off the bench. And Zach said something interesting answering that question that caught my attention that I want to talk about on the other side. Here's Zach LaVine.
Zach, was this always the target date to come back?
No, I was just waiting on whatever day my ankle felt the best. I think you guys saw me out there shooting for the last week, so it was sometime this week. I was just ready to go.
Is it kind of a coincidence that there's a lot of trade talks of possibly being traded to Milwaukee, and you guys play Milwaukee tonight?
I think there's been trade talks with a lot of teams. I don't think I worry about that. I think that's your guys' job to try to put some storylines out there. So.
What was the decision in there to bring you off the bench? Was it just kind of coming back from injury, or was it something else?
No, Doug just told me when I told them I think I'll be available for today. Last couple of games, they were asking me, are you thinking about it or not? And he told me he'd rather have me come off the bench today. So I said, okay. I ain't done it in a while, but it was fine.
So Zach dismisses what Jake asked and the coincidence of it all, saying it's a media storyline. It's something that we're putting out there to create our narratives or whatever. And I would understand if it isn't true, if Zach just simply, today was the day that he happened to come back, and it just so happened to be at the same time that it was against a team that was rumored to be interested in trading for him. If it truly is all a coincidence, I understand why a player would be frustrated by the media even suggesting that he intentionally waited to come back on this particular game. But then he had that comment at the end where he told Doug today. He said, I told Doug Christie I was good to go today. So that's Zach essentially admitting that he chose to go today. Now, again, it could just be, hey, I went through my pregame warmups. I was feeling the best I felt. I think I'm good to go, Doug. I'm ready to return. But also, again, that's Zach saying that on a night against Milwaukee, a team that's interested in trading for him, and I have to believe Zach LaVine would much rather be playing for the Bucks than playing for the Sacramento Kings right now. He chose to come back on that day. It's just too many coincidences for me to not naturally be skeptical with anything or with everything. So I don't know. You be the judge. You put on your investigative hat or whatever, and you tell me if this was a coincidence, if you think he did choose to return, if you think the Sacramento Kings wanted him to come back on this day. That's perfectly possible too. If the Kings think that the Bucks are the only team that's potentially going to trade for him, maybe the Kings were like, yes, we want you back out there. We want you to play well. We want you to convince them to make the move to come and get you. Who knows? But it was awfully interesting, to say the absolute least. Suddenly, I've teleported back to the ABC 10 studios to tell you about Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every single night, the action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based off of player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. Getting started on Prize Picks is quick and simple. The app is super easy to navigate and figure out. It makes watching games even more engaging, which can help for the remainder of this Sacramento Kings season, especially when following individual player performances. The flexibility of ways you can play are amazing, from flex play, where you can still get paid even if one pick misses. And the new early payouts feature is a game changer. If a player starts hot, you can actually cash out before the game ends. Download the Prize Pick app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So like I said, this was just a really, really weird basketball game tonight. A really weird game because it felt the entire night like the Bucks were just beating the hell out of the Kings. The entire night, it just felt like Sacramento was going to get clobbered again in some way. And maybe this is just the feelings from the past losses and all the blowouts that the Kings have suffered this season piling on to an individual game. But for a large portion of this game, it felt the same way as when the Kings were dominated in LA by the Clippers last week. Even though it never got nearly that bad, the Kings did fall behind by 26 points in this game. Giannis Antetokounmpo was balling. The Bucks were all over Sacramento. The Kings could not score. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the third quarter and to start the fourth quarter, the Kings explode on a 27-6 run and fight all the way back to within 3 points with 8 minutes remaining. Like suddenly they're getting stops, forcing turnovers, getting out in transition. Zach LaVine had a big dunk off of a Russell Westbrook steal. Zach LaVine knocks down a three. Drew Eubanks scores like a post hook to cut the lead down to like 6 or something like that. Like all of a sudden, it was hard to tell, like, are the Kings just suddenly alive? Or did the Milwaukee Bucks just completely fall apart? It's been a bad year for the Bucks. A bad year. They've been way worse than they're certainly supposed to be. But it just felt like it was a very confusing run by the Kings. Now, it was a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. And it got the Golden One Center engaged. Because to start this game, y'all, that was the most lethargic I've ever heard a Golden One Center crowd. I know it's been a rainy, yucky Sunday here in Sacramento. But that Kings crowd was not really into it. And I don't blame them for it. First off, the Kings weren't giving them much to be into. And the way this season has gone and how difficult this basketball team is to watch, I don't blame a Kings crowd for showing up and not exactly being ready to give their all or willing to give their all in terms of cheering and support. But boy, when the Kings went on that run, I'm telling you, the building was probably like 60% full. The announced attendance was over 15,000. It wasn't over 15,000. It wasn't. It wasn't close to 15,000 in my opinion. That building was probably like 60% full, and that's being generous. But when the Kings were on that run, that place was popping. The Golden One Center was really, really loud during that run. So I acknowledge that run in a couple of ways. One, it was super fun. It turned a game that looked boring and just another ho-hum blowout loss. Would have been the Kings' like 4th blowout loss in the last 5 games. It turned it into something fun, engaging, gave me more to talk about here on the podcast, so that's a big plus. And then, it was encouraging to see the fight by this Kings team. It was encouraging to see the Kings rally after Keegan Murray went down with yet another injury. We'll talk about that in just a second. But they fought like Russell Westbrook did his Russell Westbrook thing, came alive. His stat line was nuts in this game. Russell Westbrook's final stat line, played just shy of 38 minutes, 21 points, although he shot too much and didn't shoot well. 5 of 16 from the field, 1 of 8 from 3. 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 steals, 3 blocks. Like, Russ was everywhere in this game. And he was a huge part of that Sacramento Kings push that they made there towards the end of that game. Neek Clifford was on the floor. Neek tried to catch a body. He went for it. Would have been one of the craziest in-game dunks of the season by far. He cocked that thing all the way back and nearly got it to fall. He was fouled, and the dunk just rimmed out. But he went for it, and I love him for it. He was part of that push. Again, Zach LaVine was on the floor, was part of that push. Got to give credit to Drew Eubanks. I'm not the biggest fan of watching him play, and I'm certainly not a fan of him playing over Dylan Cardwell right now, but Drew Eubanks was on the floor for that Sacramento Kings push and rally. Like, I give these guys credit. They fought, they battled, and I'm just wondering if I'm being too much of like a Debbie Downer or too much of a curmudgeon. Like, I'm joking that it happened so quickly and then was gone so quickly because suddenly the Bucks built their lead right back up to like 18 points in the blink of an eye. It was like, did it actually happen or did we like imagine it? It was that quick. It felt that way. It was just such a barrage by Sacramento out of nowhere. Just this massive run after they had been dominated and manhandled the entire game, and then it's immediately gone, like, quickly after that. So I'm joking, like, did we imagine it? But does it matter that much? Again, it was entertaining. It was fun, but that's the most that I feel towards it because, like with everything with this Kings season, the Sacramento Kings will have those flashes, those great moments, that one game or that one quarter or that one run where everything, look, there it is. There's Doug Christie's vision. There's the team playing the way they're supposed to be playing. And then it goes away very, very quickly, and it ends up ultimately being bad. That's the Sacramento Kings experience this season. But it was a weird run. A run that absolutely came out of nowhere. This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think, there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades that you can make, and that's why this episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O. It's the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everybody sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies easier and faster, way more personal. It works right from your phone or computer. You can even keep your existing numbers. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off for your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. If there is any team on the planet that can rival the injury bug or injury plague that the San Francisco 49ers have gone through this season, it might be the Sacramento Kings. Now, to be fair, the Niners' injuries to Bosa and Warner and Brock Purdy missing half the season and everything, far more consequential for a team with playoff aspirations and Super Bowl aspirations than the Sacramento Kings, who at best were probably a play-in team. Like, I've said this before, and I don't mean it in any kind of disrespectful way. I'm just being real. Like, I don't view the Kings injuries as an excuse to suggest that this Sacramento Kings team would be significantly better and everything would have worked had they remained healthy this season. First off, it's very difficult for any team to remain healthy for as much as like the Sacramento Kings were able to do the Beam Team one year where they finished the 3rd seed in the Western Conference. Like that was an extremely lucky injury year for the Sacramento Kings. That being said, I do believe that if the Kings had their starting lineup the entire time and they only had a few bumps and bruises instead of these big repetitive injuries to multiple guys and guys missing extended periods of time repeatedly, like I do believe the Kings would certainly be better than 8-28, which is where they're at right now. But I would also argue that them being better than that and healthy, but still not really being any sort of playoff contender or threat, would be worse for this organization overall. So I'm not celebrating the injuries in any way. In fact, quite the opposite. They're annoying. They're frustrating. I feel bad for the Kings. I feel bad for the players that keep getting banged up, like Keegan Murray. And I feel bad for Doug Christie, too. You're going to hear from Doug in just a second. Doug just seems defeated by all these injury issues that they're dealing with. Keegan Murray got off to a strong start in this game, had a nice turnaround jumper, mid-range jumper that was nothing but net, knocked down a 3. Like Keegan was doing some good things offensively in this game early on. Then early in the 3rd quarter, he attacks the basket, ends up being called for an offensive foul, falls weird on his ankle, tweaks his left ankle. I noticed it immediately. Like he jerked up and like immediately grabbed his ankle, limped off the floor. As soon as he got to the Kings bench, he was helped by 2 assistants back into the locker room, and then not long after that was declared as out for the remainder of the game. Gut feeling he's going to miss time. He should miss time. Like the things that Keegan has dealt with this season, started the season having to get surgery on his hand for the injury that he had to his thumb. Then he has the calf injury. Now he has this ankle injury. Like Keegan has been battling through a bunch of injuries so far this season. I'm not using that as an excuse for how poorly he's been shooting from 3-point range. It's just the reality of the situation. But it sucks because this is a big year for Keegan. He already got paid, but this is a big year for Keegan to kind of show us and show the Kings his potential as a potential top guy or top scoring option. Ultimately, he is not shown or given a lot of reason to have confidence that he can be that, but it seemed like he was going to get a lot of opportunity throughout the remainder of this season to prove that, especially after the trade deadline. Hopefully, he will be back very, very soon and will still get that opportunity, but seeing him deal with these injuries as much as he is, it's incredibly frustrating, incredibly disappointing. He's one of the only compelling, really, reasons to watch the Sacramento Kings right now, and it looks like he's going to miss some time again. And then all of a sudden, Keon Ellis, who played, 5 minutes in the first half. Keon Ellis, we found out, at the very end of the game, hurt his left thumb. And he did not return to action. I don't know, had his thumb not gotten hurt, how much more he would have played in the second half anyway. But, so Keon goes down with a thumb injury. Keegan Murray goes down with his 3rd kind of significant injury of the season. God, man. It's brutal. It's brutal. I know Kings fans are feeling that frustration, even if we knew or felt like this season wasn't going to be great. But Doug Christie, Doug is really feeling the frustrations. Really, again, you can hear in his voice and see in his body language here in this clip I'm about to play for you how much the injuries are taking a toll on him. Take a listen.
This is hard, man. You feel for your kids, first and foremost. It's just difficult. Yeah.
I feel bad for Doug, man. I really do. I feel bad for Doug. Again, I don't think this team would be monumentally better and would be doing a significantly better job of changing his fortunes or convincing people that he was a good head coach and deserved to have that 3rd year of his contract picked up. But he's dealt with a lot, period, over the last calendar year, from taking over the Kings midseason after Mike Brown was fired and riding the waves of that to everything this organization, trading away De'Aaron Fox, all the shakeups this organization has gone through over the last year, Not sure if he's going to keep his job or not. Then Scott Perry hires him, and then he's been dealing with all this season. The Kings are one of the worst teams in the NBA, potentially the worst team in the Sack era history, depending upon how many games they can win. They got to beat 17. They got to beat 17 wins to avoid being the worst team in Sack era history. Who knows if they will or not. I feel for Doug. And I know how much of a competitor Doug is. I know how desperate he is to win, especially for this city. And I can imagine he feels like the basketball gods or whoever is against him with all these injuries that the Sacramento Kings are dealing with. But again, like, I'm not trying to celebrate injuries in any kind of way because that's just sick and wrong, and I'm not going to do that. But it could end up being a blessing in disguise for the Sacramento Kings organization, saving themselves from themselves. Like keeping this roster that absolutely should be better than 8-28 from being too good that the Kings don't get the draft lottery position and the star in the draft that they need to truly get this rebuild going and actually do this thing right. And also force the Kings to make some trades that need to happen at this trade deadline instead of making a silly buying move to try and make another desperate push at a play-in spot. So maybe it is a blessing in disguise, but it sucks to go through, and I feel for Doug Christie. All right, I want to hear your thoughts. Your thoughts on the injuries, your thoughts on the coincidence or not of Zach LaVine returning against the Milwaukee Bucks. And if you want to share with me what you would want from the Milwaukee Bucks in a Zach LaVine trade or the best you could hope for from the Bucks in a Zach LaVine trade, let me know. And just your thoughts on that comeback. Like, what do you take away from that comeback? That effort that the Sacramento Kings had in that fourth quarter to at least make it a little bit of a game there. What do you make of that? Hit me up at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, and leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. I'm warning you ahead of time right now. I have a pretty big announcement coming this upcoming week, and I'm just warning you. It's coming. But the next episode of the Locked On Kings podcast will be on Tuesday. After the Dallas Mavericks game. It's an 8 o'clock start, a national TV game, Mavs and Kings in Sacramento. So I'll have a podcast after that game like normal, although like a lot of these podcasts have been lately, it'll probably be coming out on the later side of things. Thanks to everybody who stays up late to watch these. Thank you to you if you wake up the next morning and listen to it during your morning routine, on your drive to work, whatever. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.